Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We're here today to talk about the Orlando Magic because I think they're super interesting, at least lately. They've done a lot of things where people think that their moves don't make any sense, and to some extent, I think they're right. They are very unpredictable, and they're hard to get a read on what exactly they're going for. But the guys that they're getting, the three rookies specifically, aren't bad players. I think that's a common misconception here, is that the Magic players aren't bad. It's that they're guys with high ceilings and maybe a little bit lower floors, and that's okay. So they're guys, maybe they won't work out, but if they do work out, they can be great. So the Magic are kind of going for upside, they're going for ceilings, and they're going for all-star potential. And I think a lot of people are confused by what the Magic are doing. A lot of people called them the losers of the draft, which I think is a little harsh. I really like the Anthony Black pick, but we're going to get into all that stuff. We're going to talk about a bunch of Magic players, like 10 or so guys on the Magic right now, what makes them so unpredictable, what makes it hard to read what the Magic are going to be next year and years going forward, and just what to expect from them and what they can do in free agency. So we're going to talk about a lot of Magic stuff, but before we get into it, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy, and if you don't like the content, you know, just unsubscribe later, that's fine. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. First, starting off with the rookies. So they have three surprising additions, and we're going to go through them one by one, but it's Anthony Black, Jett Howard, and Kai Sotto, their Summer League edition out of the Philippines, who I was very high on going into last year's draft. But let's talk about the three guys individually. Starting off with Anthony Black. So he went number 6 overall in this year's NBA draft. 6'6", 210 pounds, is a bigger guard, pretty good handle, good defensively, great athlete, not quite the level of athlete as like Osar or Amen Thompson, but is a very good athlete. Only 19 years old, 13 points per game, 4 assists, and 2 steals for Arkansas this past season. But just 30% from 3, and that's the biggest kind of confusion for a lot of people. For a team that's kind of lacking shooting and is struggling in that department, adding another really important piece, obviously the number 6 pick, who also can't shoot that well, I think it is, concerning to some people, I might say. At least they're a little worried about what the spacing is going to look like. To some extent, he's kind of redundant with Markelle Fultz, as they share similar strengths and weaknesses. They're both very athletic guards. They both struggle from 3. They both get steals, get out in fast break, play good perimeter defense, pretty good passers, but aren't super perimeter oriented, are good at attacking downhill. And I think they're similar guys. I think Anthony Black at this point probably has a higher ceiling, but this team already has a ton of combo guard types, whether it be Markelle or Cole Anthony or Jalen Suggs, or if you want to go further into it, you can talk about someone like Gary Harris, or they just have a lot of guys, right? They have a lot of similar players that you're bringing Anthony Black into, and unless he's really good right away, there are some concerns there. A lot of people are comparing him to are comparing him to Elfrid Payton, a former Magic pick that didn't work out, but I think more than anything, that's about just his hair, and that he's a guard who can't shoot that well. So I think the Elfrid Payton comparisons are kind of unwarranted. Anthony Black is a player who projects very well. He's compared to guys like Lonzo Ball, or even LaMelo, but more like Lonzo, I would say, is guys who are very good defenders, tall, and great initiators of offense, and he's a guy who's going to make his teammates better, so that's where the upside is here. If he reaches his ceiling, he could be a perennial all-star and the perfect pick-and-roll partner for Paolo Banchero. I don't know if he's going to be like a strong 20-point-per-game guy at any point in his career. He probably settles somewhere in the 18 to 22 points per game range, and on top of that, it's putting up like 9 assists and a couple of steals. Drew Holiday type of guy, probably a little bit better passer than Drew Holiday, but a good defensive guard who's going to focus on that probably, and try to grow as a shooter. The shooting is a little bit of an issue, but we'll see where that goes. And people didn't love this pick. I like it a lot personally. I think they needed another point guard, another facilitator, just to really help initiate the offense, so I don't mind it. But now we can get into the 11th overall pick, which would be Jett Howard, which people really didn't like. This is one that drew a lot of ire from fans, from onlookers during the draft. People were very kind of shocked that they went with Jett Howard here, number 11. But 6'8", 215 pounds, pretty good size for a wing. Just 19 years old as well. 14 points per game, 2 assists at Michigan last season, but 37% from three. That's the big thing for me, is he is a passable shooter right now, and he's going to continue to grow as a shooter while having some shot creation of himself. As the son of NBA. He's more of a college legend than an NBA legend, but Juwan Howard, a member of the Fab Five at Michigan, but also was Jett's coach at Michigan this past season. Was a shocking pick when it happened during the draft, especially with Gradey Dick and Jordan Hawkins still on the board. It just feels like if you're going to go a shooter, you would have went Gradey, who most people were predicting they would take, or even Jordan Hawkins, who at this point just feel like both more elite shooters than what Jett Howard brings you. But however, I think Jett likely has the highest ceiling for self-creation in terms of getting his own shot out of the three wing snipers, and if developed correctly, could look like the smart pick over the other two. I am very high on Gradey, though. I think he's going to be great in Toronto. I think he's one of Toronto's next stars. I'm going to talk about him at some point for Toronto, but I really like him a lot for them. And Jett Howard it's a tougher pick to swallow. It was unexpected for Orlando to go with Jett at 11. A lot of people mocked him kind of early 20s or late teens. So to him to go at 11, it felt like a reach. But reportedly, he shot the absolute lights out of the gym when he worked out for Orlando. Like he was not missing anything, it felt like, from what I've heard. So he worked out fantastically and earned himself a spot in Orlando because of that. And I see the upside here. I know they need shooting, but they want a bunch of guys who can create for themselves. That's what they're doing with all their pieces, is getting guys that can get their own offense on top of being able to be assisted. So they're looking at a bunch of different guys, and they want guys that are more than just specialists, and I think that's their idea here with Jett Howard. But I probably would have went with Gradey at number 11. And third, let's talk about the third rookie that people are a little surprised by, and that's center Kai Sotto out of the Philippines, who I really loved coming into last year's draft. I had a lot of videos talking very highly of him. I just don't think you see many guys who are 7'3", can block shots and shoot the three. He's kind of like a 3-and-D center. Like his range is extending out there. Pretty good offensively, but the defense outside of shot blocking has a little ways to go. I think that's fair to say, but I really like him. Undrafted last year in the 2022 NBA draft. 7'3", 230 pounds. Is just a big dude. Is a physical specimen. Taller than Bol Bol and much bigger in terms of weight. Is pretty strong at 7'3", and I've been impressed with him throughout the process. Is 21 years old, so he's a couple years older than the other two guys we just mentioned. Is older than Paolo Banchero, but isn't an old prospect by any means. There's guys that came in this year that were 23 for sure, so being 21 I don't think is some huge issue. Has spent a lot of time in other pro leagues. Spent 2 seasons in the NBL with, I'm forgetting the team now. I thought it was the Breakers, but now I don't think it is. But they came over, the 36ers. He played with the 36ers in the NBL. Sorry, I was blanking there. He came over during the preseason this last year, and they actually beat an NBA team. I'm trying to figure out what team that was, but they won. And he was pretty good in that game. He wasn't their best player by any means, but he made an impact, and I thought he held up well against NBA competition. The Suns, they beat the Suns, by the way. Did play for the G League Ignite, and in high school there were debates going around whether it was Kai Sotto or Chet Holmgren is the next great unique big man of the two. I think there were those legitimate conversations, and Kai Sotto is a super high ceiling guy who just kind of fell off the map a little bit, but he's arguably the best prospect to ever come out of the Philippines. All he needs is a shot to give it his all, and he will do that. He's a competitor. He's gonna give you everything he's got, and I'm super excited to see how he plays for Orlando in the summer league. He can block shots with ease, rebound at a high rate, and his three-point percentage is shocking for a player of his height, albeit on a low volume. He's not taking a ton of threes, but on the ones he's taken leading up to last year's draft at least, he was pretty good on them. I think it was almost 40%. He was a pretty good shooter just in terms of three-point percentage. but we'll see if he can do that in higher volume. They have a pretty good shooting big already in Wendell Carter, but I think it's just super interesting to see what he could bring. But a lot of people were completely out on him. There were a lot of teams last year that just said, we don't want this guy. He didn't end up getting drafted. His manager kind of told people, don't draft him, and we're going to go sign with the Summer League team. And I think that worked out really poorly, and his manager was fired. I think he was mismanaged pretty poorly. Is an NBA talent, and I think he's going to show that in the Summer League. But a lot of people would call this an unpredictable move, but I really like it for Orlando, and that's kind of going to be the theme here. Is I like a lot of the things that they've done. Let's talk about, before we get into the more unpredictable guys, let's talk about the guys who I think are both going to be great, are kind of clearly going to be great, and that would be the blossoming star forward tandem in Paolo and Franz. Starting off with Paolo, was the #1 overall pick last season, the reigning rookie of the year, only 20 years old still, 20 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists as a rookie, was great, was just a star level guy as a rookie, and was super fun to watch, is extremely physically imposing. He's a bruiser down there. He's going to get through guys. Has drawn some Carmelo Anthony comparisons. I think those are pretty fair. He's pretty athletic as well. He can get up pretty good. But shot just 29.8% from 3 last season. It has to get better. It's just not good enough. And it was really brought down by a pretty bad month. I believe it was February, where he shot like 3% from 3. It was horrendous. But for the rest of the year, if you take that month out, it does look a little bit better. But Paolo is a guy who is pretty good in the mid-range right now, really good at getting to the rim. But if you want to be a great NBA player at this level right now, you have to be able to shoot the 3 more. I'm sure he's working on that, and they're working on surrounding him with at least some guys that can shoot. But the biggest thing is getting more of them, because a lot of people would say that they're not doing a good enough job at that. But he's a near lock to be a future All-Star. I would bet a lot of money that Paolo's an All-Star in his career. It just feels very certain at this point. Seems like a true franchise cornerstone. Like, he's the guy you bring in, you say, this is my #1 going forward. It went kind of untalked about because he was in Orlando last year, but I think Paolo had one of the best rookie seasons we've seen in a while. I was really impressed by what we saw from him, and I think he was dominant as a rookie. And Orlando will eventually go as far as Paolo Banchero can take them. He's going to be the alpha for this team, and as good as he is going to be how good the Magic are. But Paolo is a cornerstone for this franchise, and he is the reason that the future is bright, on top of Franz Wagner. They found 2 future All-Stars in a pretty similar time period. It's pretty uncommon for teams to do that, and they're both on the wing. Has improved in both seasons so far, is very versatile both on offense and defense, can basically guard 1 through 5, could get a little overpowered guarding 5 sometimes, but on offense can shoot the ball, can attack the rim, can do a lot of different things, can run off screens, can run some pick and roll. But he was just great value as the 8th overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, so the year before Paolo. And if you did a redraft right now, I think Franz is probably going top 3. Depends on if you like him versus like Giddy or Mobley. It's one of those two probably, but he would be up there. Franz is very good for number 8, and he was a good amount better than the 8th player in that class. Just 21 years old, and last season averaged 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, and shot about a league average 36% from 3. That's what I'm looking for a lot of their guys. If they can get like Paolo up towards 36%, if they can get a lot of these guards near 36%, then they're going to be okay, because if all your guys are pretty much average, all of a sudden it's not really an issue. But right now, Franz is one of the better shooters on the team, so that is kind of concerning. But hopefully he continues to get better from 3, and the guys around him do as well. Is also likely a future All-Star. I think that's pretty certain as well. I'm not quite as confident in it as Paolo. I don't think it's necessarily a near lock like Paolo is, but I think it's pretty likely that Franz is an All-Star. And I think he could be the Jalen Brown to Banchero's Tatum. I think this could be the next great duo in the Eastern Conference. In the Eastern Conference. 2 pretty young guys who are on the wing and very talented with each other. And I just really like both players. I think they pretty likely could be that next great duo in the Eastern Conference. I don't see a young duo as good as them right now. If you want to talk about Cade and Ivy, sure, but I'd rather have Paolo and Franz. If you want to talk about like Green and Şengün, I think it's pretty easy. Paolo and Franz. It's two guys that are both extremely good, not one dominantly better than the other, and are both future stars in this league. And he's a fan favorite. Teams love him. Fans love him. He's fun to watch because he's kind of unorthodox, but I really like him, and is a guy who's a likely future All-Star. But let's talk about all the wild cards, because these are the guys that make the team as unpredictable as it is, and it's guys with high ceilings who have either underperformed or have yet to have been unleashed. So a bunch of different guys here. Let's start off with Markelle, former number 1 overall pick. Last year was his first healthy season since 2020, and those are really his only 2 healthy seasons, and I believe like 5 years of play now, so the health has been an issue. But 14 points, 6 assists, and 1.5 steals last season. His shot is slowly coming back, is just an incredible athlete at the 1 spot, and is still just 25. He's not super old or anything. He has become a quality NBA starter, despite many calling him a bust. For a long time, it looked like he was going to be one of the worst number 1 picks ever, especially because Tatum was taken 3rd. It looked pretty bad for Markelle, but he's really turned it around. He's a very good player now. How high is his ceiling? Really, I think it's the biggest question with him. At this point, it's probably unlikely Markelle gets back into like all-star conversation, but I think he's going to continue to be a very good NBA starter, which for a long time looked unlikely. So I think his return to graces have been very fun to watch, and a guy who I loved watching last season. I thought he was great as a pretty good passer, a guy who got a lot of fast break plays because of the steals, and a guy who clamps up on defense. I just like Markelle. He's fun to watch get to the rim and all the stuff that he does. And I think he's going to be starting next to Anthony Black in the backcourt. Next, let's talk about Bol Bol. Center/point guard, is really a 7'2" guard with the way that he plays. Still only 23 years old. Spent some time with the Nuggets. Didn't really get to play there. 7'2", 220 pounds. A little bit smaller than Kai, but not too much smaller. I would say he walked so Victor Wembanyama could run. They have kind of similar skill sets, but I think Victor is pretty easily the better player. But Bol Bol is a unique guy in his own right. He finally got minutes last season. Averaged 9 points, 6 rebounds, and over a block per game. 63% from 2-point range for them. Was super efficient near the basket just because of his height and his reach. But can he grow into more than just a fun bench guy, I think is the question with him. Is he just going to be that cool, guy you like to watch off the bench, or can he become a reliable starter? I don't know if he can do that. Can he become a consistent rotation member? Because as the season went on, it felt like he got less play than he did early on when it was super exciting. Next, let's talk about Cole Anthony, my co-host on the podcast on the Herman Set Show. He loves Cole Anthony. He's a big Cole Anthony guy. I can't blame him. I do like Cole Anthony, and I think he's become a little underrated at this point. Was the 15th pick in 2020, and the son of NBA legend and announcer Greg Anthony. Still only 23, pretty young himself. 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists last season, and kind of a reserve guard role off the bench, but did start some games here and there. And the efficiency, I think, was a lot better than people thought. 45, 36, 89 splits. Both 45 and 36 are kind of league average at this point, and almost 90% from the free throw line. It was a good season for him, honestly. I think the efficiency isn't bad. Like, that's the biggest thing people talk about when they talk about Cole. They're like, oh, his efficiency isn't good enough. The efficiency sucks. It doesn't. The efficiency is not that bad. He is a kind of a shoot-first guy, but if the efficiency is going to be okay, I think you can live with it, and I think he's continuing to get better, and he is very quietly improving each season in the league and just continuing to get better. So his fit with all the other guards they have is going to be interesting, and maybe a guy they look to move. But he's been good in the offseason so far, a lot of workout videos that have been promising. But will he shine in Orlando, or will it have to be somewhere else? Will he end up getting moved? I think there's a possibility of that, but just feels like a guy who can be a 15 point per game scorer in the NBA and a pretty solid starting guard for some team out there. Next, I want to talk about Jonathan Isaac, who might be the biggest wild card of all. A former number 6 pick, missed nearly 2 straight seasons of basketball with injury and kind of off-court issues. Returned for 11 games last season, super short sample size, but was immediately looking like a top 5 defender in the league. This dude is clamps, he gets steals, he gets blocks, he's ridiculous. If you look at his per 36 numbers from his return last season, 16 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 steals is insane numbers from Isaac on a per minute basis when he came back last season, and he shot 40% from 3. I don't think you're looking at that level of player from Isaac most likely, but he's put on a lot of muscle, he's put on strength, and he's looking a lot better than he used to. And I think if he can get on the court and ever stay on the floor, he can be a super impactful starting player who's going to be a great wing piece for a team that needs him. But we'll see if he can ever stay healthy. Next, I want to talk about Suggs. 2021 5th overall pick, is 22. Has had a pretty disappointing first couple of seasons compared to what they thought he could be. Not the same player we saw at Gonzaga, but is still elite defensively. The defense is there, but the offense hasn't been. Can he return to the offense and shooting we saw in college? Some point guards take longer to adjust to the NBA. It's a tough position to play, so maybe he just needs more time, but we'll see what ends up happening with Suggs. But if I was looking at the backcourt right now, and I'm looking at Markelle, I'm looking at Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Suggs to me is the odd man out. He's probably the least impactful of the group right now, so I'd probably move off him, but it's still a guy with upside, and it feels a little too early to give up on him. But now let's talk about what all this means, what's next for Orlando, and what does all this unpredictability lead to. In terms of their lineup, this is before free agency and stuff. This is just what they got right now. I think their starting lineup would probably be Anthony Black and Markelle Fultz in the backcourt, with Franz, Paolo, and Wendell Carter Jr. in the front court. Wendell, we didn't talk about him because he's not really a wild card. You kind of know what he is, but good rebounder and good second chance offensive guy who can space the floor a little bit. Really solid starting NBA center. Your second unit, I think you're probably looking at Suggs, Cole Anthony, Jett Howard, Bol Bol, and Kai Sotto. I'm pretty high on Kai Sotto again, so I have him slotting into the backup center spot as soon as his rookie year. A lot of people might argue he might not make the team, but I think they would be dumb if they didn't let him make the team. I think he's that good. And then Michael Carter-Williams as your third string point guard, Gary Harris, Caleb Houston, second round pick last year who can really shoot it, Chuma Okeke, and then Mo Wagner as your backup 5. They're pretty deep actually. I think this Magic team has good depth for their youth and can be pretty good next season. Free agency, they have about $24 million, and it's going to be interesting to see who they go after. Fred VanVleet has been linked to them for a long time, but that just continues to even more kind of muck up their guard situation. Chris Middleton is a kind of a higher end piece I've seen linked to them, and then you could run out kind of like a 3 great wing unit with Franz, Chris Middleton, and Paolo, and Middleton can really shoot it, so that'd be interesting. Harrison Barnes provides you a similar thing with defense and shooting. Max Strus, Kelly Oubre, Bruce Brown, and then Grant Williams. I think you're looking at guys who can space the floor and play some defense. Max Strus and Kelly Oubre aren't exactly clamps, but they can shoot the ball. So I think you're looking at more offense, more shooting, and then some defense as well if you're Orlando. But we'll see what they do. In terms of what to expect for the offseason and for 2024, on the low end, I think you're looking at 35-ish wins. I just don't see them being worse than that. And just miss the play-in once again as like the 11th or 12th seed in the East. I think that's the absolute lowest you'll see the Magic go. But on the high end, I think they could get up to 45 to 50 wins. Depending on what they do in free agency and how high the ceiling of some of these guys end up being, but being like the 5 to 8 seed in the Eastern Conference, and expect one of Franz or Paolo to be an All-Star next season. I really think one of the two will be an All-Star. It'll be interesting to see which one that'll be, but I think one of them will make the All-Star game next season. This team can take a big jump with the right off-season moves. They were a playoff team record-wise after the first month, basically last season. If you just take from like November on, the Magic were like the 6th seed. They just had a really rough first month and a half basically of basketball, and their record was bad. They just weren't good at that point, but after that they were great. They really settled into who they were and really kind of turned into a pretty good basketball team. So I think next season you're looking at that more all season long on top of a jump from a lot of guys. Expect either one relatively large free agent or 2 to 3 smaller additions. I think maybe you tinker around the edges or you bring in one bigger fish. I think those are your options there. I think you're looking at development from rookies. See what you have in guys like Anthony Black, Jett Howard, and Kai Sotto. Your team isn't good enough right now that you can't play these guys. Get them real minutes, see what you got in them, and then maybe you try to make them impactful pieces and really grow forward with the young guys you have. And then I think you can experiment with some bigger lineups. Run Kai at the 5. You could run Bol Bol at the 4. You know, you have both of these guys in there, Franz at the 2 maybe, and Paolo at the 3. And then Anthony Black at 6'6" can run the point guard. You can run a big team. The Magic have a lot of size. They kind of feel like Raptors South right now as a team with a lot of size and length that can't really shoot that well. But I like what the Magic have done, and I think they have higher upside than what the Raptors do because of the young stars here like Paolo and Franz and some other guys I like. But let me know your thoughts. That's going to be it for this Magic video. Let me know what you think of Orlando. A lot of people, again, are kind of confused and kind of doubting what they're doing, but I think they have a lot of pieces that are interesting. I think the upside is really there. The shooting is going to be a concern, but we'll see what they do in free agency. Let me know your thoughts. I'm excited for the new guys they have. I like all three of them. Although maybe they could all be misses, I think they have high upside, so we'll see what they end up being. But that's going to be it for me today. Have a good rest of your day. Think about subscribing on the road to 9,000. Peace.